Hi, everyone. Welcome to Game Changers, an interview series where we talk to thought leaders in branding, technology, fashion, and innovation. I'm Penny Lorber, and I'm your host. I'm also the creative director and owner here at Ethera. Let's get started. Our guest today is Jana Memel. She is a producer, director, and writer. The films that Jana has produced have won 3 Oscars and have been nominated for 11. She has won Emmys, Film Festival Awards, Writers Guild Awards, the Humanitas Prize, and she has produced over 100 films, including films for theme park rides, commercials, PSAs, features, cable movies, short films, and the list goes on and on. Jana, currently you're the Vice President of Brand Storytelling and the Schools of Entertainment at the Academy of Art University. How are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm terrific. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to have you here. Thank you for coming.
Not a problem. I love talking.
We cannot wait to hear what you have to say. So to kick us off, you are quite accomplished in the film and entertainment industry. How does that experience translate to brand storytelling?
Well, everything's telling a story, and we all are brands these days. So brand storytelling is really just an extension of filmmaking because it's about getting the audience to emotionally connect. And filmmakers are past masters at that emotional connection. And industry nowadays has moved well into that area. And as well as industry, when people are working in their own social media, it's all about that emotional connection. That's what promotes people to look at the next post, to engage, is an emotional, not intellectual connection.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. So people aren't necessarily going to walk around with a logo or color palette, although they could. So can you explain what exactly is a personal brand and why you would want to develop it?
Okay, so when you drive into a mechanic shop and the mechanic walks towards your car, you not think, oh, this is going to be great, or uh-oh, or we all react when a doctor you haven't met before walks into the exam room. Don't you decide right away, oh, this person is going to be so understanding, or they seem very formal, I'm going to be very formal. We make decisions about how we feel about people in less than 18 seconds. And that has been proven in study after study. Some studies say we make them in 6 seconds. Now, clearly, in that amount of time, those are nonverbal decisions, almost always. So actually, when you said you're not going to walk around with a color palette, you should be thinking about walking around with a color palette. So when we talk about personal branding, we're thinking about our objectives always. What do we want people to think and feel about us when we engage with them? Now, that's from a first date to making a new friend to getting a job. The minute you appear, people are framing. That frame is how they relate to everything coming out of your mouth. So you and I could have the same interaction with the same things coming out of our mouths, but I've decided I like you or I don't like you. I've decided you look competent or you're not competent. I've decided I'm going to be comfortable with you or I'm not going to be comfortable with you. Then everything you say to me is going through that emotional framework. So personal branding is how you set that tone.
So do you consciously set that tone, or do you think people already have that in them and they just need to uncover it? What is your perspective on how you articulate your true, authentic personal brand rather than cultivate one that's false?
Well, I don't think you can't cultivate one that's false because you can't keep it up.
Okay.
So a brand, if you think about brand, it's about brand consistency, right? what are you going to be able to replicate over and over again? You can't really replicate falsehood. It takes too much work. So for instance, I don't wear high heels. I stumble. It hurts my feet. It's not organic. When I wear high heels to an event or something, I feel like it's a Halloween event. Or I'm wearing my mommy shoes. And I'm not comfortable in myself. And if I'm not comfortable in myself, how am I going to make you feel my genuine warmth and authenticity? It's identifying your brand within your own framework, which doesn't mean that you can't curate your brand based on events.
Okay, so how would somebody do that? Like if someone who's never had thought about personal brand, but they're like, okay, I'm listening to Jana and I got to get one of these. So how do they go about starting that off?
Well, first of all, you have one. We all do. We all have friends. Most of us are employed. So we are putting something out already. But is it the part of us we want to be putting out? And to whom are we putting it out is a big part of the question. So, and it is somewhat situational. So you have to, I mean, no secret, folks. We pre-interviewed. And Penny asked me this question. I said, look in your closet.
Yeah.
Because we are drawn to our wardrobe, right? Our wardrobe, the entire zeitgeist of the entire collection of our wardrobe says something about us. And you look and you say, well, what is my personality? What am I constantly, unconsciously projecting? And how can I amplify that to benefit me in situation to situation? So I thought about what I was wearing today. I don't know what it says to you all, but I think it says artsy, casual, yet somewhat buttoned down. That's the note I wanted to give. This is in my closet. It doesn't take a lot of work to figure out, because that's the story I want told about myself, and it's who I am.
And you also mentioned when we talked before that you don't go out and then curate a whole new look that's not in your closet. You have to go with what
Who you
you've
are.
already chosen.
Who you are, okay? What's the statement about who you are? So how do you do that? Well, you sit down and you take an inventory, and then you do it with your friends. If you were to think of 3 words that describe yourself, if you were to think of 3 words that you want to describe yourself, now look at how you can project them, and are they in alignment? So you can't be what you're not.
And so do you think that just comes through, or people have to curate experiences or any other thing that can project
It's
the authenticity of
situational.
themselves?
It's
Okay.
situational. First of all, who you are isn't situational, right? It's not like, people say, well, I leave my private life at home and it's not in my work life. Let me tell you, if you've had a bad day and you go to work, it's in your work life. You need, though, to think about, again, who you are, and it's not who you are here, it's who you are. And then how do you amplify that in the different situations you're in? What is your goal? So when I go to a meeting, try to think about what my goal is before I start the meeting, before I go to the meeting, before I walk in the door. What do I want to achieve in this interaction? A lot of that, let's go back to the 6 to 18 seconds.
Okay.
A lot of that is what you're signaling by what you're wearing, how you walk in the room, the amount of eye contact you make, Now that's really important with Zoom, right?
Mhm.
Because I could be wearing pajamas for all you know from the waist down. Makes it much easier in a way to curate your look because it's only this much of your look. But what's going on behind you too? I have literally done casting sections where actors have bras hanging in the back of them. I'm like, and it's like, did you think about that this was going to get you a job? And having a bra hanging behind you. And I'm not kidding. I literally mean this. And
Yeah.
more than one actor. So it's the entire visual message you're giving, from your posture, if you shaved or not shaved, your makeup or not makeup, your earrings, your hands, everything about you gives a message.
So you mentioned before that's called framing. So how is framing different than people stereotyping?
Who are you within the frame? Okay. So if the frame sets the tone, and then it's what I'm selling in the frame.
Okay.
This is what comes out of my mouth.
So you're saying like within the frame, you're in charge of how you project that image.
Correct. And it's always partly about doing your homework.
Explain what you mean by that.
Every situation, what do you want from it? Who are you going into it with? What research? You go to a job interview. What research have you done, not only about the job, but about the interviewers? Okay, I'm always saying if there's less than 3 people in the room, you better have gone on their LinkedIn. If you can Facebook or Instagram stalk them, you better have gone there. Have you looked at their interests? Because there's always small talk before the meeting starts, right? So I once went to, because I also do personal consulting. I have a consultancy called The Hollywood Way, which is hollywoodway.net if anybody wants to check it out. I once went to a meeting to see if a company in a very conservative region of America would bring me in to do storytelling consulting. And I went on the chairman's LinkedIn and I noticed he was head of the Harley Davidson Businessman's Association. And the guy was this conservative, white shirt, tie, very conservative guy. And I just said, wow, you're a Harley rider. And he lit up. And he talked about Harleys for like 5 or 6 minutes, and I got the job.
Yeah.
I went to a meeting with a headhunter, and I noticed he was wearing a ring. And I said, wow, what a beautiful ring. And he said, my wife's a home jeweler. And we talked about his wife for 5 minutes. They loved me. How do you then, in the situation, what's your goal? What do you want that person to do? I wanted the headhunter to love me. I wanted the businessman to think I was interesting and that I was interested in him. So what research can you do that makes them think, wow, you're what I want? Because especially when you're looking at job interviews or anything about getting hired, if you're in the room, it's no longer about your qualifications. And don't fool yourself and think it is. Everybody in that room is qualified.
So then you're not only considering your personal brand at that point, you're also considering their personal brand and how you're going to interact with that.
Yes. And I just had a meeting with one of the major television, not a meeting, I brought in one of the major television showrunners from Party of Five, which was 20 some odd years ago. He created and ran it, to a show that's on television right this very minute. Okay, guy's got a long history of very big success. And I asked him how he hires. And he said, after I read the writing samples and I decide they're qualified, I bring them in and I spend about 2 hours talking to them. And we don't talk about work at all. Because I have to know I want to eat lunch with them.
Right. So this is really good because a lot of people are saying, oh, well, personal brands are only for social media, or maybe if you have like a really high-end career, but you're saying personal brands are for every situation, and it doesn't matter on what kind of career that you have, or does it? Does it matter what industry you're in?
Every situation is an opportunity. How many times have you gone to a party where you meet somebody at a party and they say, well, what do you do? And you go, well, I run a graphic design consultancy. And they go, oh, my sister's brother
Yes.
is in need of.
Yes.
Right? Every situation, and you must look at it that way, is an opportunity, either in your personal life, oh, I know this great guy who would love to meet a girl like you, or I know somebody who has a need for what you have to offer. So even when you're not looking for it, every situation is an opportunity, either on a personal level or professional level, or both, to amplify your life. And the more you're aware of it, the more you can have fun with it. Right? I mean, the thing I think people don't realize is that when we walk through the doors of our business or enterprise, we're still taking ourselves.
Right.
You can't park yourself at the door.
Yeah.
And the more you try to be business-like, the less you're your authentic self, the less your ability to move up the ladder. Look at the people at the top of any ladder, they're iconic.
You talked a little bit about this before, the different types of personalities that make it to the top and then the ones that don't. Can you kind of riff on that a little bit for
Look
everyone
at
else to
Steve
hear?
Jobs, look at Elon Musk, look at Martha Stewart, look at the woman who started Spanx. I could go on and on and on and on. Anybody who runs anything is a person willing to take a running leap off a cliff and fail. Because you have to fail 400 to succeed. And the difference is they know they're going to fail. They don't care because they know they're going to succeed. And therefore, they don't think about failure. Now, am I saying they are comfortable losing money? No. Am I saying it makes them happy to fail? My God, I've spent some depressed days. But in the final analysis, for every time at bat, if you hit 1 out of the park out of 10, and it's the success of the magnitude of 10, you won. But a lot of people aren't comfortable with risk. And again, we're going back to your personal brand.
Yeah.
You don't have to be that person. Over my career, which has been 45 years now, terrifying, it was my birthday yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Over my career, which has been 45 years, I've only had, I think, 4 assistants.
Really?
And these individuals, the majority of whom are women, have all lasted for me well past 5 years. One lasted 20 years. And then one I'm currently working with, we're on our 6th year. These women don't want to run off cliffs. These women live for order. Right. They live for making things work, but not taking a risk. And we're a great team, always. Because without them, I could not be me.
Yeah.
So even if you look at marriages, 9 times out of 10, there's that type A and type B, and that's what makes it work. There's nothing wrong. They're really happy being them. I sometimes say, don't you want a bigger position, whatever that means? You're as talented as me, you're smart, you're creative. No, we like what we do. So again, let's talk about personal brand. They like what they do. They're comfortable in that job. It makes them happy. So instead of being self-critical or down on yourself, it's always what makes me happy? What is going to get me out of bed in the morning? And then how do I sell that?
Well, and it also sounds that by knowing who you are, you therefore know your personal brand, and then you also know where you fit and who would make for good partners or who would make for good workplaces.
Partners in life, partners in work. You need compliments.
Right.
I've always been with a good cop, bad cop. I have no problem saying no. I've always had a partner who can't say no to people's faces. They're the nicest people in the world. They need me to say no, and I need them to be nice.
There you go. So it works to have the compliment. I have a question for you. I'd love for you to talk about it. When we talked before, you talked about how if you don't know how to build your story, you not only look in your closet, but you look at your childhood to discover like what characteristics you brought on or what stories you tell.
Well, this is about what motivates you. And by motivate, I don't mean, well, I'm going to get $100,000 if I do this job tomorrow. It's what are you afraid of and what makes you happy? And again, if you're 18, maybe a little harder. But by the time you're 25, you know, like, what are your bad habits? Okay. Now let's look back at why you have those bad habits. Okay. And if you know that, for instance, even though I teach, I am an awful procrastinator. I do not do stuff until the gun is at my head and it's cocked. Okay. So I don't ever miss a deadline. I always get an A. But I do a lot of all-nighters. I can say I'm going to write and I'm going to be early with this thing and I'm going to not put that stress on me. But that's not what's going to happen. Now, then you get mad at yourself, then you beat yourself up, then if you're me, you overeat, and then you still do it the way you always did it. If you know that about yourself, then you know it's going to get done. And that it's unfortunate that I will be pulling an all-nighter tonight because I have to deliver grades by midnight. But those grades go in at midnight, and I could have done them before, but I did everything else before. And you know what? I've come to the point where it's okay because I know I'm going to deliver and I know that's who I am. I had to write an article for a magazine. It's due on Friday. I've known for a week. I set aside Saturday. Sunday, I sat down. I was inside of I don't know how I'm going to write the movie. I sat down, I wrote it in 45 minutes because it was like I needed to show somebody the first draft Monday morning. But it was okay because I know that's my rhythm. So yes, I fretted all day Saturday. Why aren't I writing? But not to the point where I was beating myself up because I knew my rhythm. So knowing your backstory, what motivates you, how you get through, how you handle stuff. What's my personal brand? My personal brand is nobody works harder than Jana and she always delivers. Okay. Nobody needs to know what's going on in my stomach or that I stayed up all night to deliver or anything else. They just know my brand. Then how I deal with it is a whole other situation. So you have to know your brand and you have to know how you're going to live up to it. And you have to never, ever beat yourself up, because that is the worst waste of time ever on the planet Earth.
So I have a question about that. So if once you've come to terms and you're like, I'm not going to beat myself up about this because everyone's different and I'm just going to own this part of me. What happens when, and I think a lot of young people experience this, when they put themselves out there on social media and then they get beat up by all the other comments, or they put themselves out in the workplace and then, they feel misunderstood by their coworkers or their boss. Like, what is a way to still have authenticity in your own personal story, but not take some of the criticism to heart or even adjust where you need to?
Okay, so a couple of things. If your boss hired you for who you are, you're not going to have that problem.
So the reason to show up.
But are you trying to be who you think that person wanted you to be? You got hired and then you showed up. Or are you trying to be the person you thought that person wanted you to be, and you keep trying to be that person, but really you don't roll out of bed till 5 to 9 and you're working at a place where you have to be there at 9, and so you're late 3 times a week because you're trying to be that person. You're trying really, really hard, when instead you should have been not taken that job, or you should have fulfilled who you are by saying, hey, I'm the right person for this job, but I'm going to be rolling in at 9:15. And if that doesn't work, then I'm not the right person for this job. But you can't take jobs to be who you think they want you to be. And you can't take a job that you don't fit in, because ultimately you're the person going to work.
And this comes back to when you were saying, like, if you're not authentic, it just won't last.
It won't. And you'll be miserable until you either get fired or quit. And as far as the coworkers, if you're a good employer, you've cast your staff. So if you show up authentically and they show up authentically, an employer is wanting all these people who are the way they are. They're not going to be dumping on you because you're all exactly within a framework, the right people to be working together, right? So again, one of my coworkers, I call her Susie Sunshine. She's like so friendly and warm and never has an unkind word to anybody and speaks very politically, is incapable of firing anybody or telling them what she really thinks of them. And then I have to fire them and tell them what I think of them, which half the time is what she thinks of them, right? But it works for me because she's, when I need somebody to be that way, so come on to this meeting, right? And it works for her. So when you say cast your coworkers, cast your employees, but it's all about bringing our authentic self from the beginning. And she and I like each other for what we have. Now with social media, that's a whole different thing. Who's following you? And what did you say to them? What was the promise you made to them at the beginning of the engagement about who you are? And have you broken that promise? So that's where we go back to brand storytelling. If I tell you I'm a healthy brand, and then you find out that there's sugar in everything.
Right.
Okay. So what have you said about your brand from the get-go? that people have followed you because that's who you are. Now, they're not dumping on you if you stay within your brand. If you're suddenly wildly different in any way, yeah, they're going to dump on you.
So I have a question about that, because I think some people may get a little bit confused on developing one story and sticking strictly with it, and then having multiple facets of their personality and letting those show. Or being able, so that's like one scenario where maybe you position yourself as only a fitness instructor, but then later you want to start showing other aspects of yourself, like being a mother or something like that.
Right, but that's a perfect example. That's a perfect example. If you're a fitness instructor and a mother, what are you feeding your children?
So
And
bring it in that way.
if you're doing it off brand, please don't put it on social media. Right. So if you can give your children as many Cocoa Puffs as you want, but don't put it on social media.
So you can still bring in other parts of your personality, but if you're going to pitch and project yourself as this fitness healthy person, then you need to bring the aspects of your life that stay true to that.
No, you have to expose on social media the aspects of your life that are true to that, and not expose on social media the aspects of your life that are not true to that.
There you go. Okay.
It's curating your story, right? So on social media, there's no reason to not. So part of my story is I have 3 daughters, and I'm very, very proud of my daughters, and I talk about them all the time. So even though I'm this driven working person, you're going to always see stuff about my daughters on my social media. Part of my story is I work out 7 days a week. And with my daughters, I'm in a bikini. Now, would I blast it all over my social media? No. But is it on my Facebook? And do I have a problem with it? No. Right? Because also part of my story is I'm not a very formal person.
Right.
Now, if my story was I'm very formal and believe me, there wouldn't be pictures of me in a bikini on my social media.
Right.
So what's your story?
So you develop your story, and you said, in order to do this, we're just going to do a recap. Go look in your closet, go look at the things that come from your past history, like your childhood, that have developed your motivations. So once you've done that, you can start to get your motivations, you start to get your characteristics.
And then write words that describe you, words that you wish described you. Look at where they don't intersect, and realize the words that describe you are who you are. And how do you project into situations that you would want to be perceived that way using who you are?
Oh, go ahead.
Ask your friends where the truth is. That's the other thing.
That was my question. Should you go ask your friends to get or your family to get that sense check? Because everyone has kind of a different lens in which they see you.
But you don't want to tell them your words. You want to ask their words, and you want to tell them it's important they be honest, because they're not helping you if they're not.
So now that you know that you've developed this personal brand, you've done those 3 steps, you've got the words, you've got the closet, you've looked at your motivations. How do you start to effectively communicate your brand? Do you just start being you, or do you go make a video? What should people do?
So you left out the most important thing. You have to decide what you're using it for.
There we go.
Right? What are you using it for? What's your social media for? Well, let's be honest. Whatever you think it's for, any employer is going to be able to find it if they want it. So you got to, if I'm in social media, people better see me the way I want to be seen. So knowing that, you can post 1 million birthday party pictures, but if there's a big old bottle of wine and 16 beer bottles in front of you, just move them. Right? All right, doesn't mean you can't be at a party, doesn't even mean you can't have a beer. 16 might be a problem. So you've got to be cognizant with social media. Anybody and everybody can see it. What your brand is, that's one thing. If you're going to look at employment opportunities as a consultant, as a freelancer, as a full-time job, how are you gearing your website? If you look at hollywoodway.net, it's pretty funny and it's very colorful, and yet it's all about business consulting. And I consult for Fortune 500 companies, but I curated that. Look at this sweater, okay? Very nice black and white sweater, but it's funky.
Yes.
I sound pretty intelligent, but I'm also funky. I'm also not conventional. That's curated. I mean, it's who I am, but it's also, I thought about what I was wearing today. I put a lot of thought into it.
So that you're showing multiple aspects of your personality at the same time. You're showing up as creative and intelligent at the same time. You can run a business and consult with huge enterprises, but also be funky and creative and artistic.
And that's when you say, how do you activate? Where are you going? What do you want to do with it? How are you using your brand? But you've also got to be aware you can't not communicate. Anytime standing in an elevator, in the line at Starbucks, people are assessing you. You are communicating.
So would your advice be to stop looking at your phones and start looking around you?
No, my advice would be to be aware that everything you do is a statement about you. Everything. So if you know the statements you want to make about you, you're aware of that. When you go out of the house, what are you wearing? When you go on social media, what are you posting? When you go to a party, what are you saying about yourself? Because the world is too small and everybody talks to everybody.
Yep.
And anything outside the walls of your home that is public facing in any way is a statement about your brand. Being at the gym is a statement about your brand. Now, I go to the gym 7 days a week.
Wow.
I'm still aware it's a statement about my brand. It doesn't mean I'm not out there in a bikini swimming in a swimming pool. But I'm aware that if I meet a guy in the jacuzzi and he's talking about business and I start talking to him, that's an opportunity. So what bikini am I wearing? I'm very serious, right? Everything is outside the doors of your house is a statement about your brand. And you better be aware of what statement you're making, because that old line, a picture is worth 1,000 words, is 1,000,000 times true. So when you say, what do you do? I would also ask, in each situation, what is your goal?
Awesome. I think that's fantastic, because I don't think we think about the situation where we should be. So if you were to recap and just say, if we were to say, Jana has 3 things people could start doing today to help them with their personal brand, what would you suggest?
What do you want to say about yourself and what do you want people to think about you? Number 1. And then remember, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And start thinking about what you want to get from communications that are deliberate. So social media is a deliberate communication. A job interview is a deliberate communication. Believe it or not, a party is a deliberate communication. Even if you're going to have fun, you never know who you're going to meet. So every interaction in public is a deliberate communication, and how you show up better be about how you want to be seen.
I think people forget that one. Like, it's easy when you show up on social media because you could say, okay, I'm making something or I'm posting it. But remembering, like, showing up at the store or showing up at the gym or at a party, I think those are the ones that are easy for people to forget.
So when people say, I don't care what people think about me, when people say that, that is not about caring about what people think about you. It's caring about what you're saying.
Okay. I like that. Because it puts you in charge, right? It gives you.
Well, also, they can take whatever they want, but if you're not saying something, then what are you doing? You know,
Right.
like we all, I think most of us want to think we're kind. We want to think that we are perceived as whatever we want to be perceived as. We can't control what other people think of us, but we can set the framework. And then what they do with it, but we can choose to set the framework.
Yeah, I like that because it gives people agency and helps them. Or it helps me feel confident in how I go out there. And it's just like, okay, well, people are going to take what they want, but I get to choose how I'm going to show up. I get to choose what I want my story to be. And it doesn't have to be fake. It's what we're talking about is authentic.
Yeah, so I want to be clear. I don't wear makeup when I'm not doing businessy stuff, okay? I'm not saying you have to wear makeup every day and dress up every day. But even with your casual clothes, what does that t-shirt say? Literally, the wording on the t-shirt that you're wearing, right? Don't wear stuff in public because somebody's going to read the t-shirt.
Yeah. We see this with politicians all the time, or their wives, or other really famous people. They're like, why are they wearing that shirt?
What did they say? What did they read it? I mean, I have a writer friend who makes a joke about people. He goes, that person lives in a house without mirrors. When you go out your door, you're making a statement. And in today's world, you don't know who's looking.
Right. Yeah, that's definite for sure. All right, so do you have anything else you want to say on personal brand? Because I'm going to move on to questions from our audience, unless I skip something.
I do want to say something.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid of being you. Because there's value in all of us. And you can't judge yourself. You can just be the best and most authentic you are. And trying to be somebody else is impossible. Trying to be who you think people want you to be is unsustainable. So figure out who you are and be the best you. Everybody likes those people better. You can tell when someone's being authentic. People are drawn to that. People are drawn to products like that. People are drawn to people like that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think everybody needs to be reminded. Questions from your audience? So the question was, what is the number one thing you do to get stakeholders to align with your vision? And this is in terms of your production work and getting people aligned with your story. Oh, in production? Because I would answer it very differently in corporate America. And in production, it's the director, not the producer. If you're asking about production, but also the fish stinks from the head, right? So it's all about passion. So making movies is really hard. Making movies is not what people think it is, okay? When you're shooting a movie, you work a minimum of 12.5-hour days. Let me repeat this, a minimum of 12.5-hour days in America. That's whatever works. Now, some movies work a lot longer, and some movies, some days work a lot longer. but it's a minimum of 12.5-hour days. And you have to get to work and you have to get home from work. So think about how many hours you're working a day. And you're doing that 5 or 6 days a week. So if there is no passion from the people you're showing up to work for, who are earning more than you, who are asking you to work as hard as humanly possible, you're not doing it, or you're not giving it your full energy. So the job of producers and directors is to be passionately committed to the film or the story they're telling, and to project that passion to everybody who's working on it, so that they're doing it as much for you as they're doing it for a paycheck.
I like that. And so you said that's different from corporate America. How would you answer that different? And the question was, how would you get stakeholders to align with your vision?
I think that passion is still a big part of it, but where film is ethereal, like we all want to make blockbusters, right? But we actually want to make the best film possible. We want to move. Yes, we want to move as many people as possible, which means we'd like to make a blockbuster. But if you're making a small independent movie, you also all know you're not making a blockbuster. So you want to connect with people and you want to make the absolute best ethereal thing possible. I think if you're making a tennis shoe, sales matter. Now, sales come from an emotional connection because all buying decisions are ultimately made on an emotional basis. But motivating your staff is creating a corporate culture which is true on a movie too, but where everybody feels they're heard and valued. Both are true on a movie. But also you can look at the end result in a very different way because you're measuring it by the success of sales. So you can also, in a very empirical way, show if what we're doing is working. Whereas in a film, if I get great critical reviews and not so great box office, I'm going to be really upset, but I'm going to still know I did a good job.
Yeah.
Sort of if you're not selling your tennis shoe, but everybody likes it, there was a disconnect somewhere. So there's empirical evidence in corporate America as well.
Okay. And then our second question from our audience is there any value in studying film in college?
100%. 100%. You're in an environment where a lot of people are working together in the same goal of creating really good product. You're learning you're studying and learning from past masters what worked and didn't work. People are teaching you. So should you just go lift weights, or should you watch videos and work with a trainer? I'll tell you, if you just go lift weights, you're looking to be injured. All right. If anything you do well requires a lot of practice and exercise and skill building.
Right.
So what I teach in writing classes is the fundamentals of writing. And then over and over again, I'm holding students accountable to those fundamentals and showing them a path to be able to replicate to excellence, which if they don't learn it, they're never going to get there. Even when you master stuff, you're constantly trying to learn to be better. What can you do to be better? So right now I'm swimming. That's my activity of choice. So I'm watching videos. How do I improve my stroke? What am I thinking about in my core? I'm learning to be trained. If I just got on the pool and went, well, how do I swim faster? You can't make that up. People have spent years studying the curve of your hand. Why shouldn't I learn from them?
Right. So you're learning from a community, not only of fellow students, but from a community of other masters, which are your instructors at that point, who have taken their whole life experience and are saying, like, I'm going to give you some shortcuts here with my expertise. I took a lifetime learning it, and I'm going to help you out.
But not only that, for instance, in my writing classes, I make people watch a film a week. And then we dissect the film together as a group, what worked and what didn't work. So we're looking at working professionals' work, and we're looking at successful films. We're looking at bad films. We're looking at good films. We're looking at what works from a story structure and how have they done it? What works from what would be scene description and how have they done it? Where is the silence? In a film we watched last week, there's a lot of silence, but in the silence, there's a lot of stuff that's clearly was in scene description, which is telling us stuff.
I think you mentioned before about passion, and I think this is where it comes in, because when you're around a group of people who are equally as passionate about the stuff that you're doing, you can have those types of conversations and they can go on, and you're getting the learnings from that.
Yeah, but you have to build skills. I wrote a movie for Kobe Bryant, and Kobe told me that if practice was at 6 a.m., he was there at 5 a.m. throwing free throws. Okay, that was when he was Kobe. He still got there an hour early to practice his skills.
That's amazing. I think we forget about that too, because you think, oh, once you get to be the best, you could take a break.
You always can get better, and you always have to maintain.
Yeah. So I'm noticing the corner, you have a little golden statue there. Can you share it?
I won this for a short film called Ray's Male Heterosexual Dance Hall, which apparently is on YouTube. I didn't put it there, but it's on YouTube.
Oh, I've never seen an Oscar so close up, so I'm getting excited about it. Thank you for pulling that out. I know it was kind of off to the side.
Come over here and weight lift with it. They're very heavy.
Oh, are they? Well, I might come over there. I need to get some biceps. That's all I've got for today. Do you have any other words of wisdom for us before we sign off?
Be you.
Thank you so much for your time. I know you are incredibly busy. So I really appreciate you coming on. I'm sure everyone's really going to appreciate your words of wisdom, your experience, and thank you so much for sharing with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks to everyone for watching today. We'll be featuring a new speaker each month, so be sure to subscribe to catch all the latest episodes produced by Ethera. Ethera is a creative studio that specializes in branding and UX UI design. You can check out some of our work at etheracreative.com and consider us for your next design project. Thank you.